has been an awakening. Have you felt it?
This is Tatooine Sons, the only fan podcast to name a canon Star Wars creature and to be endorsed by the writer-director of The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson. I wrote a haiku for today's episode, guys. Are you ready for my haiku?
What prompted that?
I don't know. I thought I'd do something different.
Okay.
I mean, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, it's a dad haiku.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I tried to do it, but it didn't work. But anyway, it says, podcast airs today. Heroes of Kingdom Come Speak. Tune in, take a flight.
That was nice.
It's a good haiku.
I feel like I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, me too.
We'll talk more about Kingdom Come and the characters in it after this message from the guys over at the Reverend and the Reprobate. This is Tatooine Sons.
We are the Reverend and the Reprobate, just two best buds interviewing people we have no business talking to. I'm Lucas Pinkard.
I'm Dan Gibson. These aren't tears on my face.
Every Thursday, we interview somebody else from our favorite fandoms and yours. You can check those interviews out on the Christian Nerd HQ network. You can find us on YouTube at RevRep Podcast at ReverendRep.com. And if you can't remember our name, just go to baconoffice.com. It's way easier to find new episodes every Thursday. Thank you guys for supporting Christian Nerd HQ, and check out the Reverend and the Reprobate.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody was lit.
Now, as we are listening to this, where are we going to be on Tuesday? Did you decide? Well, Disney World.
Oh, I didn't pay attention to the schedule. I just go where mom tells me.
It's either Magic Kingdom Epcot that we know of, so...
Because we'll be at Disney. I think Tuesday is an Epcot day.
Okay.
So,
Guardians.
I'm not 100% sure. Maybe Magic. I don't remember. So yeah,
it'll be
Guardians
fun. Either Tron or Guardians. This is either one.
Either way is good. And if we're wrong and it's Hollywood Studios, then that's okay. Rise of the Resistance and Smuggler's Run and
Tower of Terror.
and
is Rockin's
open.
Good.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. So you feeling okay over there, BB?
No, I'm hanging in there.
Fighting a cold again?
Yes.
Sorry about that, man.
Here's what it is.
We'll get through this. Welcome. To all of you listening right now. Sorry, the dad moment was early. I was checking on my son. Welcome to Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast. We believe that pop culture is the mythology of this generation, that there is a story, it is written on our souls, and that these myths speak to that story. And that is why we are in the midst of an 8-episode series looking at the iconic DC Comics graphic novel, Kingdom Come.
Yes, sir.
Any amazing revelations or thoughts on this graphic novel since the last time we talked about it, or as a result of this series?
No. It's been like 3 days since our last recording. So
yeah,
I haven't thought of anything. I do need to read it again, though. It was a good read. Maybe I'll read it on the drive up too.
We got 8-hour drive down, 8-hour drive back.
I could finish it a couple times probably.
You think so?
No,
you read it in less than a day.
I read it in about 3 hours.
Yeah, so
you're built different. So
we're you're built different. What does that mean? What does that have to do with how he reads?
Have you not heard that expression?
I'm not sure I understand how you're applying it.
Just built different. I don't know. He's more capable of that certain thing because he's built differently. Than the rest of us. So. Okay.
My humor did not land at all. He took it literally, and now we had a really weird moment on the show. We should probably get started. We're talking about the Trinity characters. The Exile is the name of this episode. Obviously, the reason is because it starts off with sort of all three of them in a form of exile. Not so much with Batman, but Wonder Woman is definitely in exile.
Yes,
and Superman is in his own self-imposed exile. So I figured that makes sense, right? And even Batman is to an extent. He's sort of pulled himself away, and
he's had to,
and that kind of thing.
Years of physical toll.
That's right. So let's talk a little bit about this. Talk a little bit about what's going on in the stage of this. Let me kind of set it up with a couple questions here. Why does Kingdom Come present these, super legendary, classic DC heroes in this form of exile? Why does it start off like this? I mean, how do these conditions of exile sort of make the story get started, pave the way for their character development throughout the story?
Yeah, it kind of it really shows that this is a new era for superheroes, and how the old superheroes and the old regime of that has kind of died off, and how it's different now, and so they had to exile themselves away from that, and how there's this new hero rise of really anti-hero kind of characters, and it's kind of causing these superheroes to reevaluate who they are, what their place is as superheroes in the world, and if they should change along with the new status quo of superheroes.
Yeah. I feel it kind of prompts this moment of deeper introspection for the characters. It leads absence and exile can lead to a lot of important character growth, or not even necessarily growth, but development. I mean, here we'll go. I'll go there. It reminds me of Jesus in the desert for 30 days. Granted, it's a very different mindset. Days, by the way. It's 40 days. Sorry. 40. It's a very different scenario, obviously, in this case, but he does that because he's preparing to make a huge change in his life and change the way he functions. He's
entering in a new phase, right?
A new era of his life. It's no different for our heroes in this story, right? Superman, it's more of a punishment in his mind, but he definitely changes pretty dramatically.
Is it really a punishment, or is it just he doesn't see any reason to continue on?
No, I just don't think he feels part of the world anymore at that point.
Because what triggers him going into this self-imposed exile is the death of Lois, isn't it?
What he considers to be the only tie that he has anymore to the human world, because his parents were dead, and now his only connection to the human world, Lois, is gone too. So there's no point for him to be a part of it anymore.
I'm trying to think, does the world at that point, or the way they portrayed in the story, do they reveal that the world already knew that Superman and Clark Kent were one and the same, or is that part of him dead as a result of the fact that Martha and Jonathan Kent are gone, Lois, who knew, is gone, and so Clark Kent has died with their deaths?
Yeah, I don't know if
it says anything in the story about that.
That's an interesting point, though. I hadn't thought about that. Like, I never looked to see if the world knew that Clark Kent was Superman or anything.
Because that's sort of the way that we're introduced to him in this story, is he keeps saying, "Don't call me that anymore," with Clark Kent. Like I guess the only one that really knows is Bruce and Batman and the other Justice League, Wonder Woman. She even brings it up. I mean, she's obviously calling him Clark, but they're superheroes, right? Nobody in humanity seems to know that Superman is Clark Kent.
Right. It's just Superman.
So for him, that character, that person, that persona is gone. With
Makes
it.
sense.
I think that it sets them up for a chance to sit back and think about what it means to be a hero, right? And I think that they all come at this they all come into this story in Kingdom Come from a very different answer to that question. Right. So this exile sets Superman up to, I'm no longer part of humanity. I want nothing to do with it anymore. You've got Batman trying to, I can't control everything in the world. I'm going to separate myself from the other heroes. I'm just going to focus in here on Gotham, and I'm going to use what I am capable of doing in order to bring order and peace and security to my new empire. Yeah, sorry, I didn't even know where it was going until I did it with that. But that is kind of what he does, right? And he sees heroism as like, I have to protect Gotham, and that's the only thing that matters. Right. And then you have and I'm a little fuzzy on Wonder Woman and her exile. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But she's exiled she's not exiled to something like what we see with what Superman does to himself and what Batman's doing. She's exiled away
from Themyscira.
And now she's trying to like be the person that's jumping in to fix everything.
Yes.
As a result of it, so they all come to their conclusion as to what their exile means for them is very different with that. So let's talk a little bit more about Superman with this. How do you guys? He's super. How is the Man of Steel? How do you feel like he's kind of portrayed differently in this story in Kingdom Come compared to maybe some of the other narratives with it? What are some of the challenges and conflicts that he faces in this story? And then how do you feel his character evolves through it and the significance of that development?
I think one of the biggest differences that we see in his character in this story is he's no longer that unwavering symbol of hope that we're used to. I mean, there's a reason why at the time that this comic came out, these heroes were cliche, cheesy, campy, is because up until this point, Superman was Superman.
Kind of one dimensional.
Yeah, he was he couldn't be stopped. He was always optimistic about everything. He was a symbol that you could look to in times of trouble. I mean, even his symbol means hope, right? So we immediately see in this story that he's not even no longer being a symbol of hope for humanity. He's just not even hopeful himself anymore. It's kind of broken that part of his person and his character completely right in the beginning. Because and we see something that isn't too crazy because he has his base of operations is called the Fortress of Solitude, so it's not surprising that he would go to some solitude every so often, but in this story, he completely separates himself from everyone he knew and everything, which isn't what we'd expect. Usually Superman tries to be in front of the action, helping with whatever problems might arise. And we see that he's like, oh, I'm just going to leave this be for everyone else. And that's not what you come to expect from Superman, having seen the previous iterations of him in the comics. So.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You talk about how he's retreated into the Fortress of Solitude and how that's something that's in all the Superman Star Wars, all the Superman stories, right?
Yeah,
the Fortress of Solitude. I remember that all the way back from the 1979 Batman or Superman. I'm so off
goodness,
right now.
You're out of it.
I'm thinking about 2-3 things right now. All this story here. The idea of solitude is not a bad thing, right? So Superman having this place where this safe place that he's able to go and disconnect from the pressures of being this superhero, this god in a lot of ways, and the pressures of that, where he goes, he gets to reflect, he gets to commune with his father. With it, I mean, there's a very spiritual element to this idea,
and there's nothing wrong with it. It only becomes a problem when you use it to avoid other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Solitude is good, but it also, we are created for community and to be a part of the world. And so this idea of solitude becoming the only reason for our existence, or the only existence that we have, is the challenge that we see in that. So.
Yeah, definitely. And Superman has some more challenges because he is facing some internal and external conflicts. He's dealing with the new heroes and them rising up, the new generation that's kind of just gotten out of hand. He's having to now deal with that when he gets out of solitude. Wonder Woman brings him out of the solitude and helps him see how wrong the world is. And so Superman takes it upon himself to fix all of this, even though it's really not his job to fix all of it, but he feels like he has to be this savior for the world.
Well, it's been his job for years up until this point.
And so he's struggling with that, but he's also struggling with the fact of losing Lois and losing basically all of his family at this point, and due to the Joker, and then Magog killing Joker because he deemed it right, because supervillains shouldn't be allowed to live if they do this kind of stuff. So it's difficult for Superman to still be a part of this world, even after everything that he has loved has kind of been taken away from him at this point. And it was it's interesting to see how devastated he is, especially in the farm. He just doesn't want to deal with anything. He just doesn't want to leave or deal with that. But then when he kind of does get taken out of the farm, he doesn't address that that's still affecting him. He just goes and moves on to kind of fixing the world and its problems rather than dealing with his own. And even Bruce, to an extent, points that out when they first meet up in the Batcave. So he really deals a lot with that.
I think it's I can understand this moment or this scenario a little bit with the grief causing him to withdraw, just because of how I felt, several months back, I guess back all the way back in January when my mother passed away, and I had to deal with the reality of that. And she's been one of my, I was very close with my mother. I was very close. She was a big supporter of mine. She was kind of one of my cheerleaders. Right. And she always believed in me, always was, cheering me on and encouraging me, and always in my corner for everything. And with her loss, with losing her, it felt like I didn't know how, in a lot of ways, to go on without having that person, and I still struggle with that. There's still times. I mean, recently, something happened, and I wanted to call my mom and tell her about what was going on and make sure she knew about it, and it's just a natural instinct. And so I think that's something of what he's dealing with. He's Superman, right? So he's not supposed to feel these things. He's not supposed to struggle. And he's lost his mother. He's lost his father. And now he's lost Lois. And he doesn't know how to function as his own person going forward with this. And so he pulls back. But the beautiful thing about the way that his character kind of moves forward in this story is through the encouragement of Wonder Woman, and through his, he makes a lot of mistakes in this story. I mean, the major plot line of this story is really seeing it from his perspective with this. He does come all the way through and finds a balance to it, and finds how he can now move forward and be not the same Superman he was before, but the Superman that he needs to become for this new era with it. So it's really interesting. Let's talk a little bit about Batman now. I'm sure you're excited about that, Nate. How do you guys feel like Batman's character is different in Kingdom Come than he is in some of these other stories that you've read him in? What are some maybe the internal, external challenges that reshape not just Batman, but Bruce Wayne and his perspective and actions in Kingdom Come?
Well, I mean, one thing that is a major change is Batman's no longer in the front lines patrolling the streets of Gotham. I mean, he's not a god like Superman and Wonder Woman. He's gonna get old. His body is going to break down. He's a person just like the rest of us. So he isn't able to be that dark knight that Gotham is used to. So he's had to reevaluate the way he runs things with having he's got like those bat bots patrolling around, and the whole city, basically every corner of the city is under surveillance and stuff. It's very much a police state, militaristic state, but also like kind of behind the scenes at the same time. And it works, obviously. They say in the story that it's the safest city on Earth, which is what Bruce had wanted from the beginning. But he's not the cape and cowl like he used to be. He's just kind of managing everything from the sidelines, which now that he's not physically in the fight, he has to be more mentally aware of everything. He uses surveillance and intelligence for everything. I mean, one of the things that spoilers, but I mean, no surprise here.
The 30-year-old
comic, and we're talking about it. So one of the things that really kind of irked me for a while I was reading it is like, why is Bruce on the side of Lex? Like, I know, I kind of get it, but like also I didn't think Bruce would stoop this low. And then when he revealed that it was all a ploy, I'm like, all right, yeah, that's Bruce. Okay, we're good now. But he's much more covert and subversive in the way he does things, because he can't be as physical anymore, even though he does in the end. He's got his cool bat armor thing going on, and it's great, but he's definitely shifted from the Batman we know from the past.
Yeah, Nate, I'm going to let you talk in a second because I know it's Batman, so it's your thing. But I think another thing that I noticed kind of in that challenges thing, externally he's feeling this pressure from Superman. He's feeling this pressure from Wonder Woman. He's getting all of this, even Lex Luthor and what's the name of that society? I can't remember what that group that he is. The
Sinister
Legion
Six
of Doom.
Oh
no, it's not the Legion of Doom in this. It's something like something for humanity or something like that. I don't remember what it is, but they're like all coming in there with these external challenges to try to force him to make an alliance with them, to confront the metahumans and confront the challenges in the way that they all see as being the right way with it. And then internally he's struggling with just the reality that he's not the same as, you brought it up earlier, he's not the same as Superman and as Wonder Woman. He is human. He is frail. He is breaking down. He's in this exoskeleton suit to try to keep him going on. So he has to change everything. So he's got all of this pressure around him. I think that's a big part of who his character is in this.
Yeah. And he has some very complex relationships in this as well. I mean, with Superman, we see the argument in the Batcave really is the big part. And Bruce keeps calling him Clark because Bruce doesn't really care what he wants, because who would? So
because he's Batman.
Well, I think the one thing that I've always loved about their relationship is Bruce doesn't treat Superman any differently than he would treat any other being on the planet.
Not at all.
He doesn't play favorites with Superman, and I think that's what you're talking about happening in the Batcave there.
And because he knows that even though Superman could crush him in an instant, there's still this kind of mutual respect that he wouldn't do
and
that.
Superman's the Boy Scout, and Batman's always played on that. So it is a sign of like respect, but there's conflict there because they have different ideals on what to do with this new generation of heroes. And then when it comes to Wonder Woman, Bruce always has admired Wonder Woman, but completely disagrees on how she's handling the dealings with the new heroes. We see that at the end when they start to fight each other, because Bruce is like, you need to stop. You see what they're doing now, and we need to help work against this because you're just killing these heroes at this point, and that's not how we're supposed to deal with it. And then with Lex, we all thought that it was kind of this, why would Bruce be working with Lex? It doesn't make any sense. But then it was a completely flying under the radar, and then stabs him in the back at the end there to kind of just get closer to Captain Marvel and figure out what the deal was with him. And then he's able to figure out how to save Captain Marvel from the mind control and all that stuff, leading to Superman. But you also have to kind of figure out the fact that at this point, Batman and Bruce has probably lost most of the people that Heath loved as well. Alfred has to be gone. We don't know where Selina Kyle is. Probably not alive anymore either. And Dick's alive. We know that he's
Red Robin.
He's
right?
Red Robin in this story, but
and I'm trying to remember, is Red Robin kind of part of the new Justice League that Superman puts together?
That kind of, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So Dick agrees with Superman, which happens a lot in the comics. Whenever they disagree, Richard Grayson usually goes with Superman rather than
Was Damian
Bruce.
in this story?
Damian wasn't a thing 30 years ago.
Okay.
So
when was Damian created then?
Yeah, it was
late 2000s, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not sure even if Tim Drake was in this or Jason Todd or anything like that. So he's lost a lot of people. So even Bruce has kind of lost what he has for his humanity. But he kind of deals with that by making sure that Gotham, following his actual mission at this point, instead of wondering what to do with relationships or anything like that. He's just making sure that Gotham's safe.
Yeah.
One thing I just kind of want to add now that I'm thinking about Damian Wayne is if they decided to do a retelling of this story somehow with some of those newer characters, I think Damian would be an interesting character to put into this, because my limited exposure to his character is he's a bit more brutal.
Oh, he is absolutely. He would almost be like a fit with the metahumans,
right?
The younger generation.
He would probably leave Bruce and be a part of the new metahumans.
So that would be an interesting story to tell. Having Bruce have, it's almost like I can't think of an example, but Bruce having to deal with the fact that his own biological son is part of the problem in a way. I think that would make for a really interesting.
Yeah, it happened in
story.
Injustice as well. So yeah.
It was just a thought.
Let's talk a little Wonder Woman now. with that. And we mentioned her,
Old
of course, throughout the course of this. But let's talk a little bit about what some of the challenges with her are, what some of her changes are, maybe some of the pivotal moments that shape the character in this, some of her interactions specifically with her interactions with Batman and Superman on that. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, she's supposed to be, and how she is in most of the comics is that she's supposed to be the ambassador for Themyscira and kind of going out into the world and helping people understand that Themyscira is its own rightful country and that it's peaceful and all that stuff. Basically, just being a normal diplomat. But apparently, in this storyline, she didn't do that. At least Themyscira didn't believe that she did that. So the Amazons kind of banished her out, and now that she's banished from Themyscira, she's not a human either, so she's not accepted into society like that. So she's kind of in this limbo state of not being anywhere. She's not accepted anywhere. So she starts becoming rageful to a point because she's seeing how these heroes are being just brutal and not helping people, actually, like she deems is what superheroes should be doing. So she becomes brutal herself against that, kind of becoming what she hates more than anything. But she is kind of pushed away from that, and then she forgets her Amazonian teachings of more pacifism than anything, or at least resolving with peace. So she becomes brutal again, and so we see a lot of that as a conflict internally and externally through her.
Yeah, and she's that exile. I think you touched on it there, but I think it's really important, that idea that exile from Themyscira and not a part of humanity causes her to have a major identity crisis. She isn't really sure how she fits into this. So she's trying to find her place. And so she's doing that by trying to be the
only thing she knows how to do, and that's be a warrior.
Well, I think so. But I also think that's why she's bringing in Superman. I think that she's trying to go back and correct mistakes and wrongs and trying to bring things back because she can't figure out how she fits into it. And so she's hoping Superman will help solve this problem with her so that she has a place in this. But then, throughout this entire thing, she's as she's all over the board, right? She starts off trying to bring in Superman and trying to be a diplomat, and then she gets really, really intense and goes to an extreme and becomes super warrior like you said, Sam. But I think that as much as her methods are changing, she's trying to remain true to who she is and her ideals in this. And so it's a really interesting take how your actions you can see how someone's actions may seem inconsistent, but when you look at their motivations, that inconsistency may actually be coming from them trying to remain true to their morals and their ideals. And they're struggling to find out how to do that.
Yeah. I mean, Nate, you brought up something that was actually a really interesting point in that she's exiled from Themyscira and she's not a part of humanity either. And I think that's a large reason why throughout the comic and especially at the end, her and Clark can relate. They're both in the same boat. I mean, Clark's home was destroyed and any ties he had to humanity is gone, while she's in the same situation. So I think there's that common ground amongst them being both super powerful beings that they can connect on. So there's that kind of that affection and mutual understanding there. But they have their disagreements. We can see that in a lot of scenes. But I think ultimately Clark and Diana get along. And then with Diana and Bruce, there's another mutual respect because they've both been through a lot, both being members of the Justice League, so they can see eye to eye on a lot of things, and there's alliances and these understandings of the burdens that they both have to bear. So
yeah, let's kind of put them all three together, right? Let's talk about how specifically the Trinity, right? And were they established as the Trinity? I think I asked this earlier in the first episode, but Had they been like known as the Trinity by this time?
Basically, from what I know, yes.
Because I think I was remembering watching that DC documentary that was on Max, and I thought that there was like this moment that it was around this time, maybe it was a little bit before that, where they were bringing that in. But trying to remember that. But let's talk a little bit about how they intersect, how they diverge, kind of how their journeys individually all come together to really make up the story here of Kingdom Come. Talk a little bit about how sort of they intersect and they diverge in the way that they do things.
Basically, the Trinity really shows how different the world is now with superheroes than what they were, because they have this ideal of helping people is the number one kind of mission at this point, rather than taking down the supervillain is important, but helping people first, which is an ideal that Superman's always had, which is an ideal that we've seen countless times throughout all of these heroes. But now the superheroes in this new world are more like removing the supervillain's important, and the humans can sort themselves out because they're lesser beings at this point, which is different from what we all know as superheroes. And so that's why the Trinity believed that they needed to change back to the old times of what they were. But kind of all of these superheroes had different ideologies with how to go by it. You know, Superman inspires hope into people and really helps them understand that even though they're humans, they can still look up to these people, and they're still powerful in their own right. And Batman, you know, strategizes and makes sure that every plan works out.
Yeah, he's working behind the scenes the entire time, right?
Is working behind the scenes. And Wonder Woman kind of balances the diplomacy sometimes and kind of the warrior side of her character. She is an ambassador, which is really what she's supposed to be. And when she does that right, it works out well. And so all these three together really helps show what they can do as a Trinity, as the Trinity. So
I think each of them kind of represent a pretty interesting and intelligent plot device in a way, or not device, but a way to push the narrative forward and to show different things. Like Superman, you know, his return and his kind of moral like restitution kind of is like an anchor throughout the whole story.
It's like that overarching theme, right?
Seeing him struggle with coming to terms with what the world is the main kind of arc or anchor. And then Batman, he shows us a different side, kind of the underside of everything, using like he doesn't have these powers, so he uses his humanity to aid the conflict, and he also just is used to show a different side of the conflict, you know, with him being with Bruce with Lex, and that whole side of humans and stuff, showing what they think of the conflict. And then you've got Wonder Woman who her role shifting throughout this, you know, from diplomat to warrior and such, kind of highlights the peace versus action balance that has to be struck. I mean, the old guard wants peace and everything on the world, while the new guard kind of don't care about that as long as everyone's quote unquote safe from the bad guys. They don't care if there's peace. So it kind of she helps highlight the juxtaposition there.
That's interesting. So why do you guys think it's important, you know, when we think about these kinds of stories? Again, this whole our entire podcast is centered on this idea of pop culture is the mythology of this generation, and that these types of mythological stories actually speak to something that's written within us. So how do you what do you think are some of the perspectives and the themes within this and these characters themselves that really touch on that idea?
Well, I think one thing that's important that Kingdom Come does is it gives us a different lens to look at these familiar characters with, you know, providing a deeper insight into their characters and seeing a different side of them that we wouldn't normally be able to see with your single issue, long standing legacy run comics. And it, excuse me, it uses these characters to even comment on modern issues. You're able to take something that existed back, with excuse me, when these readers' parents were kids, are able to use these characters in a modern setting and show that they still feel the same way, but they have thoughts on these current issues as well. So it really gives you a different look in these characters and deepens them, and in a way kind of can make you appreciate the characters more, since they're not so one-dimensional like we were talking with Superman at the beginning. He's not just the Boy Scout in this story. He has real emotions.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, as it is with anything, and we've talked about this in this series, we talk about this all the time. You've got these stories, these ideas of how do you deal with generational conflict, how do you deal with grief and loss with Superman, how do you deal with age and your body breaking down, how do you deal with this feeling of abandonment, or not necessarily abandonment. She wasn't abandoned, but exiled, like rejected by her own people.
Loneliness.
These are all, and the loneliness that comes from, I mean, these are all issues that every single person ends up going through at some point in life. You get older and you have to deal with those things. You deal with grief and struggle as a result, like Superman. You deal with, this group that you're a part of, a family or some type of a social group that you were a part of, no longer wants you to be a part of them. And you feel like you feel rejected. And these stories allow us to look at these superheroes. And if we really are being thoughtful, it allows us to step back and think about these things on our own with
definitely.
that.
And there's also kind of a different the altered settings and circumstances in Kingdom Comes doesn't really change much of the core values of the beloved characters. They still believe in what they believe in no matter what, and they still believe that superheroes can be right, and their ability to adapt and remain resilient in these diverse narratives, it showcases that their lasting significance and the foundational principles that they have cemented their place as cultural icons in this world of pop culture and everything that they've done. And it's really been important and influential in DC and comics in general.
Yeah. We touched on it really, really briefly earlier in this episode, but I want to go back to it and talk about something for the dad moment.
I am your father.
So earlier when we were talking about Superman specifically, and we talked about the Fortress of Solitude, it struck me how I love this idea. I don't know how many times I've thought about the Fortress of Solitude, seen it in stories, in films, and TV, and considered the ideas, but never once did it click the purpose of the Fortress of Solitude. And the purpose of the Fortress of Solitude for Superman is for him to get away from everything happening in the world around him and all the struggles and all of those attacks and burdens and weights, and sit back. And what does he do, at least in the classic stories, when he goes to the Fortress of Solitude? He communes with his father.
Right.
He gets alone in a safe place and he spends time with his father, and he learns from his father he learns, but also he interacts. I mean, I've seen it a lot more in some of the stories as we've been watching, like Superman and Lois and some of these animated things that I've been watching. He ends up learning about how to handle situations and
his powers and everything
and all of that. And I think that that's a really beautiful metaphor for what those of us that that are from this Judeo-Christian belief system, then we understand that God is our heavenly Father, right? And so we talk about it in churches, we talk about it in Sunday schools and things like that, about being like going and doing your quiet time, but it's not just about getting away and going through some ritual and reading your Bible verses for the day, or reading a passage in the Bible and reading a devotional and moving on. That means absolutely nothing if that's all it is. It's getting alone and actually having time to separate from the things of this world and all the burdens of this world and commune with your Father so that he can speak into the things that you're dealing with. And I think that's a beautiful picture that I'd never noticed before. So I thought I wanted to bring that in as the dad moment for this. That's awesome. Next episode, we are going you cannot talk about Kingdom Come, and it's hard because this is a podcast and all we're going to be doing is talking about it.
Right.
But you cannot have a conversation about Kingdom Come without really focusing in on the art of Kingdom Come.
A lot of metaphors and symbols.
Well, and just the beauty even of it. So we're going to look at Alex Ross. Yeah, I for some reason I couldn't remember his first name in this moment, but for Alex Ross, we're going to look at not just Kingdom Come and how revolutionary this was, but also kind of how it ties into some other things that he's done in the past, previous things, and how it's really cemented a massive legacy and it's changed the way comic books have been drawn since this story came out. So we're going to look at that and have some fun with it. So that'll be good. So, if somebody wants to send us their thoughts or communicate with us on this series, what are some ways that they can do that?
Well, we're pretty active on Facebook. We've even got a Facebook discussion group if you want to join that and kind of get with some other like-minded fans. You can do that. We're on Twitter, X, whatever.
Twitter. You're on the platform formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah, we'll go with that. We're on that. We're on Threads, kind of. We're sort of on Instagram a little. And
I posted this week.
You did?
You kind of like made me feel like I had to do something.
See, there we go. I'll just bring it up every week, and then you'll remember.
I did. We got like 2 likes.
Woo. A whole 2?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we're on that.
We are.
And all of this is at Tatooine Sons SONS, so you can look for us pretty much anywhere and share your thoughts with us.
And BB Nate, what's something that everyone listening to this can do to help other people find this show?
You could share it with your friends and everybody that you know.
That would be
you can
appreciated.
Also follow the podcast on whatever you're listening to right now. Sometimes they have follow stuff. Most people do. Most programs
almost
do.
all the platforms.
Subscribing or following or whatever you can do, but that helps as well. And so yeah, just sharing. You can write us a review as well, and that helps people, if they do find it, understand why you love it so much, because if you haven't told them already why you love it, they can see it there too. So
it would be really cool if you gave us a rating, if you subscribed if you haven't, or followed if you haven't, and then gave us a rating if your platform allows it, and even a review if your platform allows it, and then take what you wrote in your review, share this on social media with your review, telling other people how. I mean, that would be like super fan level.
That would
with that, but we would truly, and if you tagged us on it, it would help, because then it helps us know and we could respond to it. So we would love that. But that'll pretty much do it. All right, let's go ride some rides.
Yeah.
Actually, we probably riding these rides as you listen to this. So we're going to have some fun doing that. But thank you so much. Appreciate you listening. Thank you we do this because we love doing it, but also we do this because you love listening, and we appreciate you guys doing this, making this part of your weekly, cadence, your routine every Tuesday or whatever day it is that you listen to it. Thank you for doing that. We certainly do appreciate that. You're the reason that doing this podcast is even more fun than just us sitting around in a room getting hot because the air conditioning doesn't get this room very well, and it's 110 degrees out. But thank you for listening to this. We really appreciate that. I think that'll do it for this week. Anything else you guys want to say?
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.
Joy, please. Yep.